Thank you so much for joining me here today on this cold winter's day at Re-Ritten Vintage Homestead. And during this time of year, I love to sit down with my cookbooks and try to find some new recipes and some interesting stories about people. And in my Doss Essinghaus Amish recipe book, I came across a recipe that is not like sourdough starter, and it's not like the Amish friendship bread starter. All I can tell you is his name is Herman. Now, you will have to have a thermometer on hand when you're creating Herman. He sounds like Frankenstein, doesn't he? Because we are going to be using yeast. And when you're using yeast, you want to keep your temperature between 100 and 110. You want to keep it that temperature so you can activate it, but you don't kill it. So let's come down and start with the base. So I'm going to start off with a teaspoon of sugar, a package of yeast, and make sure that you check the date on your yeast, that it hasn't expired. And then we're going to add a half a cup of, the recipe just says warm water, but we want our water to be between 100 and 110 degrees. Now you're also going to want to mark somewhere when you started Herman, because Herman has to be fed just like the little ones. So we're going to have to keep track of when he gets to eat. So we're going to mix this up a little bit. And then we're going to let it set just for a little while. And today's day 1, so we're going to feed Herman in just a minute. So I've let Herman sit about 10 minutes. And to him, I'm going to add a half a cup of sugar. One cup of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to add 1 cup of milk. And you can tell Herman's going to be the kind of husband who's, kind of needy. So you're not going to want to start him if you're going to be leaving town or something like that. You have a heavy work week. You want to wait until you have a week with some time on your hands. A cold week like this week is a good time. So I'm just going to stir this up until it's all incorporated together. This is what's called feeding Herman. Today's day 1. We're going to feed him real well. And then after we get it all mixed up well, we'll go on to the next step. I did end up using my electric mixer, and that made things go a lot faster. So everything is now mixed up. You want to use a glass bowl, not plastic. And once you have the base ingredients mixed up, you want to take some plastic wrap and very lightly cover your bowl here. And we are going to refrigerate that for 5 days. And then on the 5th day, we're going to feed Herman again. Every day we're going to stir him. And then on the 10th day, we're going to make something fabulous out of him. We need to stir him and feed him. So let's go down and do that. So this is what Herman looks like on day 5. Almost like pancake syrup. You can really smell the yeast. And so I am going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar. These are the same ingredients we added on day 1. One cup of flour, all-purpose flour. And 1 cup of milk. Everything you already have on hand, I'm sure. So just mix that up well. Now we're going to do the same thing with Herman that we've done for the past 5 days. We have to mix him every day. And then we're going to be able to take some of him out and bake him on the 10th day. So I'm going to get my mixer and I'm going to mix this up really well. So now that I have Herman all mixed up nicely, he's fat and happy. Make sure you scrape the sides of the bowl as well. We're just going to recover him in plastic wrap lightly, not tightly. And back in the refrigerator he goes for 5 more days, and we're going to stir him every day. So today is day 10, and Herman is ready to make something. So today I thought we would use Herman to make cinnamon rolls. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've never made Herman before. I found him in my Das Essinghaus cookbook, and I thought, wow, because you can make cake out of him, bread out of him, biscuits, rolls, noodles, all kinds of things. So I thought we'd give it a shot, and it may. So we'll try it out. But let's come down and look at Herman today on day 10. You can really smell the yeast. He's nice and creamy and thick. So to make the cinnamon rolls, I'm going to measure out 2 cups of Herman. Now, something that I found from reading the recipe, it does not look like this is a sourdough dough starter or the Amish friendship bread starter where I can just add more into this and just keep feeding it. It looks like I have to use it. It looks like you have to use it all up on the 10th day. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but it doesn't say anything about refeeding Herman. So I'm going to take 2 cups of Herman and pour him in my bowl here. And I'm really curious where the name Herman came from. Now, you know, there's a Herman, Missouri, that's a real German town. So, you know, I'm going to have to do some research on that. Or if he's the inventor of the recipe. I don't know. Somebody's Greta's husband, Herman. So I have 2 cups of that. And to that, I'm going to add 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. It doesn't say anything about putting it in a food processor or using a blender. So I'm just going to stir it here with my spatula. Of course, I'm going to slop some all over the counter, but that's okay because we're going to dump it out in a minute. And then to this, I am going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon salt. Oops, that's soda. This is salt. 1/2 teaspoon salt. Mix that up. And then a half a teaspoon of baking soda. This is the soda. Four teaspoons of baking powder. Right here. And it's getting kind of stiff, but that's going to loosen up after we add this oil here. We're going to use a half a cup of oil. Vegetable oil. I suppose any kind of oil you guys wanted. The recipe just says oil. So I think it's time. You guys know me. I think it's time to get in there with the hands. So let's give that a go. Make sure you've washed your hands after church. This is like Play-Doh. It's kind of fun. But it is sticky. But we're able to work with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take old Herman out here. I'm going to put some flour on my surface. And I'm going to work with him here until he's no longer sticky. So I'm going to keep rolling him in the flour, just like you do bread. We're kneading him and kneading him. How's your week going, everybody? It's not too cold out today. I think it's in the 40s. The sun's not shining. It's really gloomy outside, so these cinnamon rolls will brighten up the day if they turn out. And you know, this would qualify for the pantry challenge because I didn't have to buy anything. I had everything here. This is working itself into a nice dough. Very nice dough. Just keep flouring your surface. And we're just kneading it, and we're going to work it until it's no longer sticky. I think we're about there. You can usually tell when your dough's ready if you take your finger and you run it down it, and it leaves like a, see if we can see here. I think we could go a little longer. It should follow your finger all the way down. And I'm not seeing any ripples there, so let's work it just a little bit more. It's good exercise for the arms, which won't help my waist any when I start eating these. But I love cinnamon rolls, and we don't live too far from an Amish community. And we buy cinnamon rolls every time we go, and they are just fantastic. And they have the best fried pies I have ever had. All right, let's give this a go. Let's see. Much better. See how that kind of follows our finger all the way down and splits? Hope you can see it. Okay, so I think we are ready to roll this out. I've got flour all over my counter here, all over Herman, and all over my rolling pin. And I'm just going to roll this. They call it jelly roll. You know, when I was a new wife, that confused the heck out of me. I was like, what is a jelly roll? But basically, it's an oblong piece of dough or oval. Yeah, rectangle. You guys, I'm confusing you worse. It's not a circle. And we're just going to do it until it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. Look at how nice that turned out. Unlike bread yeast, there aren't bubbles in it that I have to, roll out and pop. And I believe that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. Looks like it. So I'm going to shape it into this long rectangular piece. The recipe doesn't say anything about how long. Just keep rolling until it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. And you guys, there was a time I got out the ruler and I measured. So if you need to do that, you do it. Now that we have it like this, we're going to grease our hands in some butter. And we're going to spread butter all over it. I wish my butter was a little softer. But they don't say to melt it, so I don't want to do anything that's going to mess him up. So I'm just going to spread him to the best of my ability here. Press it in. As it warms up in your hands, it'll spread better. Whoops. And I may even take my rolling pin and roll it out a little. Flatten it up. The boys are watching football today, so you might be able to hear them in there. They talk about everything from the uniforms to the helmets to the coaches. They make a day of it. Okay, so let's spread this in here a little. That'll melt. That will melt as we do it. I think I'm going to add just a little more. I want it to be nice and gooey. All right. Then they tell you to sprinkle cinnamon and sugar, but they don't tell you how much. So I'm just going to start with maybe 3 tablespoons of cinnamon and 3 tablespoons of sugar, and I'll use the rest for toast if I don't use it. And mix it up here all together. Yeah, that butter will melt as we cook. There we go. Now, I think I'm going to shake. Oh, that looks good, doesn't it? Oh, it smells good. Make sure you get it all the way to the edges. Cover the whole thing. Now, I'm going to shape it into my rectangle one more time. And roll it up. So you're going to take an end here. And here you go. You just roll and push. Roll and push. Roll and push. All the way down. Stretch as you go. Roll and push and stretch. And then push your edges in. Stretch that out a little bit. Roll and stretch. Now we're going to take our bottom here. This is like bread. And we're going to pinch it so that it stays together and it does not come apart. Don't panic if you do like I did. Just tuck it in. Take your ends, push those together. And pinch them as well so they don't come apart as they're baking. Doesn't that look pretty? Okay. You're just eyeballing it, and probably I'm doing them a little thicker than they need to be. If they come undone, you're just going to pinch them back together. Okay? So far, this has been pretty easy. And we're just going to keep cutting all the way down. And like I said, if they come apart on you, just take your fingers and pinch them together and they'll be fine. So now in a 9 by 13 inch dish, I have melted 1 stick of butter. And I'm going to let that roll all over the bottom. And I'm going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. And I really wish I had some pecans. If I did, I would add those to the bottom here as well. But I don't, and this is pantry cooking, and so it's my tough luck. I have walnuts from all the black walnuts that I harvested, but I don't think walnuts would taste as good. So I'm just going to mix this up. And then just routinely haphazardly, I'm going to spread it across the bottom here. I could just stick my face in the bowl just like that, just like this. Yum, yum. Now, you know, it also in the recipe doesn't say anything about letting your rolls rise for a bit, but they're rising. So I think I am going to let them rise for just a little bit before I put them in the oven. There, that should be good. I ended up with 20, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I did actually let these rise for 30 minutes, and they puffed up quite a bit. Not as big as what I'm used to, so I'm curious how these are going to turn out. And also, a 9 by 13 inch pan is not big enough because I ended up with 4 extra. So I'm going to put these in the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes and we'll see how they turn out. So I ended up baking these for about 28 minutes. Now, the recipe says 35 minutes, but I was afraid they were going to get entirely too brown and crunchy. So I only left them in for 28 minutes. And they smelled really good. They didn't get as big as the other recipe I have, but I mean, they're nice size. The recipe that's in the Das Essinghaus book does not say anything about icing, but what is a cinnamon roll with no icing? So we're going to make our own here. This is just a standard recipe. I have 2 cups of powdered sugar. And to this, I melted 2 tablespoons of vanilla. Going to add that. I'm sorry, that was butter, as you could tell. Now I'm going to add the vanilla, which is 2 teaspoons, 2 tablespoons butter, 2 cups powdered sugar. And now 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And 4 tablespoons of milk. You can use half and half too if you don't have enough milk. And I am just going to mix this up with my blender, and then we'll ice our rolls and try one out. And it tastes delicious. So while the rolls are still warm, you can see the icing melting on top. Yum. I'm just going to spread this all over. On a cold day, boy, this is yummy. The guys are watching football in the other room, and they were like, what's going on in the kitchen there? They could smell it, and they were starting to get hungry. So we'll be having these for breakfast and for snacks this week. Another pantry meal. And like I said, I think these would be excellent with pecans on the bottom. but I didn't have any. And that would be cheating, wouldn't it? So just continue to spread. And then we're going to try one out. It's a tough job, friends, but somebody has to do it. Let's taste these and see what I think. Really, really good. But it's like I said before, I have another recipe for cinnamon rolls where they get huge. I'm not saying one tastes better than the other. I guess I'm just not used to them not getting huge. But this was easy and it's good. The inside's light and fluffy. The bottom has that nice crunch from the brown sugar and margarine. It's really good. So here's my critique. And here's what I would do different. Next time I make these, I am going to melt the butter first before I roll them up. I think that will help keep them together when we're putting them in the jelly roll shape. I'm only going to bake them about 25 minutes because I did 28, but I think they would have been a little softer if I only did 25 minutes. The recipe had no icing included, so I just used my own. So I think this little German woman or man, let's see, woman, is one of those that shares her recipes but leaves a couple things out. You know what I mean? Some people do that so that they can say it never tastes like when Bertha makes it. You know, I've tried. They turned out good, but they're not quite like Bertha made it. So I think we'll just keep making these and keep tweaking and tweaking as we go because they're fun to make and they're very easy. I put Herman back in the refrigerator. I have about a cup left, and tomorrow I'm going to make biscuits. You guys, I hope you have a really sweet week. You give Herman a try. The kids would enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and he does taste good. And I'll be sharing more Herman recipes as we go, so you can try them out. And I hope you have a great week. Come back and see me.